For actual years now, I have been hearing about this tool called TypingMind, which is a chatbot wrapper tool that I know many of my colleagues have used in the past for various writing needs. And I don't know why it took me this long to make a video about it, but in this video, we're going to dive deep in and review it and see, is it something that I recommend for other authors who want to level up their writing? Now, if you've been following me for a while, you'll know that I have a specific recommendation for when it comes to chatbots and the workflow around chatbots. I generally recommend that every author have a writing-specific AI specialist tool that kind of tailors the workflow for writing. So, for example, there's tools like Novel Crafter, Sudowrite, Raptorwrite, things like that. Those are all kind of specifically geared for writing. And then on the other hand, I recommend having a chatbot as a sort of catch-all for all other tasks that you might need AI for, because chatbots are very simple and versatile, and that's kind of what I value about them. And I would have the same recommendation for other areas where you might be using AI. For instance, if you were a coder or programmer, I would recommend you get a coding-specific AI specialist tool to do most of your work with, and then have another chatbot as a catch-all for everything else. So with that kind of basis in mind, I want to talk about, is TypingMind a good option for that chatbot part of the equation? So we're not looking at it in terms of being a specialist tool. We're looking at it as a chatbot. How useful is it compared to other chatbots out there? So let's start by talking briefly about the pricing and how TypingMind works. First of all, TypingMind is a one-time purchase. It is not a subscription, which a lot of people will like. However, you do still have to pay for the AI generations that you use. And so even though it is a one-time purchase, you will still have to pay as you go every time you use the chatbot. Usually those payments, depending on what AI model you're using, are minimal, but they can add up over time depending on how hard you push these tools. But it is nice to know that you're not going to be charged a monthly fee just by owning it, which, if you're not using it that much, may end up being a loss for you. So here on their pricing website, you have a bunch of different options for the lifetime license. I went ahead and got premium to make this video. They market it here as 50% off, but I've never seen it less than $99. So this is what they want you to buy. But they do have a $39 tier, which removes all ads because you can try it for free. Honestly, the free version doesn't give you much. You get basic chat features. You unlock AI agents. We'll talk about that. You get voice input, so you can do some transcription and stuff like that, and you can share your chats. If you get the double the price $79 offer, you get image generation and web search, which you'll definitely probably want if you're investing in a tool like this, as well as text to speech. So we already had voice input over here on this plan, but you also get text to speech here. Notably, this is not an advanced voice mode. This is just the ability to read aloud the text that you just generated. You also get vision and images, so you get some multimodal modes there, and you can upload documents. And of course, in the premium plan, which is $99 one time, you get unlimited plugins, which we'll look at plugins later. You get project folders, which I feel like that should be on a cheaper tier, but it is kind of a game changer. I really like that about TypingMind. You get artifacts, which allows you to display interactive content like charts, animations, and simple apps. And you get multimodal chats and free updates. So these are the ones you don't get updates for free, I suppose. So really, this is the one you're going to want. It's a $99 investment, but let's go and see if that is actually worth it. I did pay the money just so I can make this video because I want to do its due diligence, but let's see if that's actually worth it. So this is what it'll look like when you log into TypingMind after purchasing it. You get your standard chatbot down here, and I'll walk through all of this, but actually on the side here is where you will find all of the different features, I guess you could call it, that TypingMind offers. So let's walk through these one by one. I'm actually going to start at the bottom and work my way up. So first of all, you do have a Teams option here. You can add more people. I think there are additional charges if you, depending on how many people you're adding. But this is actually one use case where I could see TypingMind being really useful. As you'll see with some of the other features that we're going to talk about, TypingMind is the kind of thing where if you have standard workflows that you use a lot, in a chat format. And if you have a team or a business where you kind of need other people to have access to all of those workflows and such as well, that is a use case where I could see TypingMind being very useful for you. So that's just something to keep in mind. But other than that, there's not much to comment on here. Next, we have knowledge bases. And this is something that the Mistral chat had that most other chats don't. And when I did my video about Mistral, it was one of the things I really liked about it is that they had this knowledge base feature where you could essentially create groups of content that you want the AI to have access to. So you can just add a data source here. You can upload files from various locations, including web scraping, Google Drive, Notion, GitHub, and just regular uploads from your computer. And you can take these and group them together. You can give them tags. You can, there's all kinds of ways to sort through it. It's very complex, but there's a lot to like about it. And that way, you don't have to assign documents to every new plugin or agent that you create, like you would with a GPT or a project inside of other chatbots. You can just have that data available too. And then you might have multiple plugins that you want to have access to the same data, and you can just quickly connect it that way. And it's a much more efficient workflow kind of way of thinking about it. It's a small thing, but it's something that I really like. And TypingMind does have that option here. Next, we go to the models. And one of the key features of TypingMind is that you have access to all of the different models that you can get as long as you can hook up to an API. So I've hooked it up so far to OpenAI. So I have access to all of OpenAI's models. I've hooked it up to Google's API, which gives me access to the Gemini models. And I've hooked it up to Anthropic and their API, which gives me access to all of their models. So essentially, those are the three heavy hitters. I can access any of the models from those three, which is one of the great things about TypingMind. And I believe I can switch mid-chat. If I'm chatting, I want to switch it from OpenAI to Anthropic, I can do that. Additionally, for those who saw my video about OpenRouter and know that I use OpenRouter quite a bit, you can also hook up OpenRouter. It's kind of a backwards workaround compared to other things. If there's a specific model that doesn't come from like OpenAI, Google, or Anthropic, and you want to access that specific model, and you can only find it in the API through OpenRouter, you can get that model in via OpenRouter, but it is kind of a complex workaround to do it. You'll have to find their instructions and do that. Next, we have plugins. So plugins are basically the TypingMind's version of integrations. They have integrations in other areas as well, but if you want to add, like, for instance, Perplexity Search, which I highly recommend, you can add Perplexity Search here. You also have things like DALL-E 3, the interactive canvas, render charts. These are things that I've enabled. I think a lot of them are enabled by default. But you can also add like Stable Diffusion v3 image generation. Keep in mind that you're not getting these things for free. You still have to pay for the image generations once you've connected it, but you have all of these here. You can connect it to your Google Calendar or your Slack, Microsoft Word, Microsoft PowerPoint, and a whole bunch of other things. So this is where it could become really useful for a team doing regular productivity type tasks where you wanted to have access to things like your calendar or your Gmail or what have you. This could be a really good place to put all of those integrations together. Now, plugins are a little bit different from the next thing on our list, which is the prompts. And right now I don't have any prompts saved here, but if you have prompts that you use regularly and you want to continue reusing, you can go here to add prompt and give your prompt a title. Let's just create one right now called, we'll say, single sentence summarizer. And then you say, when I give you content, please summarize the content in one sentence. You can give it tags to help you sort through all of your prompts. If you have a lot of them, this is a great place to organize them. And it gives you a couple of tips here that you might want. And then you just say add prompt. And now we have the single sentence summarizer. That might have been more of like a tiny agent, but we'll call it a prompt, and we'll come back to this. That's pretty simple, right? That's just how you add prompts here. You might have specific prompts, like a style prompt or something like that you want to pull in occasionally. But agents is a little bit different. These agents, I wouldn't necessarily call them agents, because for me, an agent is someone that is a prompt that can think for itself in a sense. And often you could also make an argument that a automation of some kind that goes through multiple steps, that could be considered an agent. What we have here is not quite at that level. It's more of a advanced GPT or project maker. So if we go to create an AI agent, you give it a name here, you give it a description, you can give it categories to help you organize it. You can give it a picture. And then you give it system instructions. So far, everything here is exactly the same as if you were creating a project. And they just called it an agent because agent is kind of a buzzword in AI right now. If you can say that you have an agent capability, it's like this big thing, but this is not an actual agent. I would not call this an agent. This is just a glorified GPT. That said, it does have some extra features that GPTs and projects don't typically have that can be really, really useful. So once you've filled in your system instructions and all of that, yeah, you have the option of overriding the default system instructions that TypingMind provides, which can be useful. They have, those are also editable. And then over here on the right, you can select your model. So if you have a specific model you want this agent to use or models that you want this agent to use, you can assign those here. Just select this and then you select the model that you want and so forth. You can also assign plugins for this AI agent. So say you wanted it to connect to your Google Calendar for whatever reason, you could do that. And this is where it does kind of slightly go a little bit more towards the agentic side of things, where it's able to interact with other parts of your workflow in different ways. You can enable text-to-speech settings for this. So if you wanted to read things aloud, you can select from 11 Labs or from OpenAI's text-to-speech. Keep in mind you're still paying for those features, but you can also select voices here, test the audio, etc. And that's what the text-to-speech section would be, which would be useful if you want it to be read back to you. Additionally, you can assign knowledge bases. So all of those knowledge bases that we talked about earlier, you can assign them access through this section. You can also add additional files here if you want to that are just for this agent, and that's pretty much it. So it's got a lot of features and it's definitely complex, but it's not much more than you would get in a simple project in Claude or GPT in ChatGPT. That's just something to keep in mind there. They do have some templates that you can get here and you can browse for more. But for instance, I looked at this YouTube content writer, and in order to, if I wanted to modify this, you can modify it, but you have to make a copy of it. So I created this copy here, and you can actually see what is being used here. And unfortunately, with this specific automation, I would not say this is a really good YouTube writer. First of all, it's just one step, right? I've created an automation for myself that helps me write elements or, certain parts of YouTube for other channels that I'm working on. And those go through multiple steps and iterations, and it checks its work and it goes back and it rewrites stuff. And it does stuff like that to really make it an excellent automation. This doesn't even come close to that. And the prompt here is relatively basic, right? So there's only so far that you can go with these agents is all I'm trying to say there. All right, now let's look at the actual chat interface. So if you want to go to chat, you just go here to new chat. You can also create chat profiles, which is a useful feature if you want, like say you have a chatbot that is geared for writing and another one that's geared for coding, and you want to sort of have a different system prompt for each of those so that they write in different ways. Or maybe you have a profile for different genres, like you want it to write fantasy or you want it to write romance, and you kind of prep it by adding a system prompt for that. You can do that here by going to add profile, give it the profile name, give it information and custom instructions. So this is similar to the custom instructions that you'd get out of ChatGPT, but you can have multiples of them, which you can't do in ChatGPT. You can in Claude, but I think Claude is the only one off the top of my head that has that capability. So that's just a cool little option there for you. Additionally, up here, you have a couple of sorting options and organization options. This one is, in my opinion, somewhat of a game changer. You can actually create folders. So if you want to organize your chats, you can do so in these folders. And I wish more chatbots had this feature because over time, as you keep chatting and chatting and chatting, your chats will get lost and you'll never figure out where they all were. You can search through them in a lot of the chatbots, but it's still very cluttered and disorganized. And it would be nice if I could just take the chats that I want to hold on to and put them in a folder. But that's one of the things I love about TypingMind is that it has that option. I really don't know why more chatbots don't have that option, honestly. But there you have it. Additionally, you can select multiple chats using this feature if you want to like sort them or delete them in bulk. You can filter by tags because you can get tags to a lot of the different chats, and you can also sort the chats in various ways. So some really good organization in TypingMind. That's one of its strengths for sure. And then down here in the regular chat area, it looks similar to most chatbots that you will have seen before, but of course up here you can select different models. So if you don't want to continue chatting with OpenAI, you can switch to a Gemini model or a Claude model or what have you. You can also enable different plugins. So if you want Perplexity Search added in, so it's actually searching for things, you can do that here. You can add other plugins in here, which is super useful. Down here is where you could select different agents or prompts that you've selected before. You can actually just type this for a shortcut and it'll pull up this thing, and we can go to like the prompt library and select our single sentence summary, and it'll just paste the prompt as you put it into this thing, and I could just hit send, and it says certainly just provide the content you'd like summarized and I'd condense it into a sentence for you, and then I could just go on and do that. You can also pull in agents and other things through that feature, which is useful as a way of just like keeping it in this single workflow, right? You can also pull in knowledge bases here. So if I had a knowledge base that I'd pulled into TypingMind, I could just select this and find my knowledge base, and so it would have access to that knowledge base. And then of course you get typical stuff you get in every chatbot. You have upload image and documents. You can send audio messages. So this is like a speech to text transcriber here. Notably absent is an advanced voice mode. While you can have transcriptions of your audio messages, and then you can also have the AI read it back to you, read the response back to you. It's not the fluid back and forth advanced voice mode that you might find in ChatGPT or in Perplexity or a number of other different apps out there. So that is a general overview of TypingMind. Now let's talk a little bit about the pros and cons. A few things that I haven't mentioned already. Firstly, TypingMind is very privacy oriented, and it actually stores your data here in locally, or at least you have that option to store it locally. That said, you're still going to need a web access anytime you want to use the AI, unless you're using AI that is local to your machine, which you can do. So it's nice to have those options, but chances are you're going to need to be connected to the internet often anyway, especially if you're doing web search or anything like that. So that is a big pro for a lot of people who are really focused on privacy and having everything stored in their machine rather than in the cloud. You have a little bit more options here than you would in other chatbots. So if that's a priority for you, you might want to take a look at it. Second pro of TypingMind is that it has very complex customization. Like you can customize the wazoo out of this thing and get it to be exactly what you need it for with exactly the right prompts, etc. Now there are limits to that. It can't do automations, for example, at least not in a way that's really streamlined and stuff like that. But it also, another pro is that it's multimodal, and it uses multiple models as well. So you can connect to almost any model you can think of through the APIs. Of course, you're going to have to pay through those APIs for your usage, which is not included in the one-time lifetime price of TypingMind. That just gives you access to the software, but it doesn't give you access to any AI words to generate with. But I will say also that the plugins and other third-party integrations is very good with TypingMind, probably more so than almost any other chatbot out there. A lot of them have some integrations with things like Google Drive, but TypingMind really has a lot of integrations that I find could be very useful depending on your use case and whatever productivity workflow you have. So those would be my main pros for TypingMind. Now the cons are, keep in mind that I am specifically looking for a chatbot that is simple and acts as a decent catch-all for what I don't get out of the specialist AI tools. With that in mind, here are some of the cons from my perspective, and these might not apply to you, but for me, they are very important. The first con is that TypingMind is pretty complex. It is not meant to be a simple chatbot. And for me, I am looking for simplicity. I am looking for something that can give me the best and simplest workflow for everything that I need it to do. And while yes, it's good to have more complexity and control in a more specialist tool, something like NovelCrafter, for example, which is a very complex program, but it is tailored for writing specific workflow, and it is is very good at what it does. But the reason I also recommend to people that they have a chatbot in addition to a specialist tool like that is so they have a simple, very simple, simplicity is the most important aspect of it, way of doing all of the other things that they might need AI for. And it doesn't get much simpler than a simple chatbot that does it, but this is not a simple chatbot. So that's con number one. Con number two, there is no mobile app for TypingMind. So I can't just go into my phone, which is often when I need a chatbot, when I'm not using a specialist tool. Like a specialist tool, I will use it on my desktop or my laptop and just use it in that interface because it is like it's work that I'm doing. But often the use cases where I need a chatbot are more like day-to-day stuff when I might be out on the road and I just need an answer to a quick question, or I want to brainstorm something. So having a mobile app it's become very important to me. I use Perplexity the most, and I probably use its mobile app every single day, multiple times a day. So the fact that TypingMind doesn't have that option is a big con for me. The third con, I mentioned it already, and that is a lack of advanced voice mode. They do have some, voice generation and voice dictation, but that's not the same as a free-flowing conversation that you can have with certain advanced voice modes like the ones in ChatGPT or Perplexity, or even in Gemini if you're using the mobile app. People called me out on that. I said in the Gemini review that there was no advanced voice mode. That's just in the online version. The app does have it. I will also say that for me, this isn't an issue, but for some people, the pricing might be an issue. If you spend $100 just for this tool, but then you also have to spend however much you spend going pay-as-you-go with the AI generations, that could add up depending on how frequently you're using those AI generations. Now, I don't worry about that too much because the pay-as-you-go model is actually usually very cheap unless you're using the really heavy hitters like Claude Opus 4 or one of those really expensive models. If you're using those models a lot, yes, it will add up. But if you're using more middle-of-the-road models like Claude 4 Sonnet or even cheaper models like 4.1 Nano, those are not going to add up very quickly. You could probably do tons and tons and tons of writing. You could write 1 million words and only use a couple of dollars worth. So it's not usually an issue for me, but I know for some people that might be an issue to pay for the tool, even if it's a one-time lifetime payment, and then also have to pay for the AI generations. So that's just something to keep in mind. So bottom line, I think TypingMind is really good for most use cases. I'd say it's the most powerful chatbot that I have reviewed so far. Better in terms of number of features than almost all of the other chatbots out there. However, for my specific use cases where I value simplicity and things like a mobile app and advanced voice mode, those are probably the three things that I value the most in any chatbot, and I use the app and the voice mode quite frequently. The lack of those things make this not suitable for my specific case. But if you're using it as kind of a workhorse, right? It's something you use at work, whatever your processes may be. I think it's a good productivity assistant. It could be good for teams that have to have access to a lot of similar knowledge bases and stuff like that. There are definitely use cases where you might want a tool like TypingMind and where it would be superior to a tool like ChatGPT or even Claude or even Perplexity, to be honest. But the fact that it's not very simple and that it doesn't have an app and it doesn't have advanced voice mode, for me, is enough to say I would prefer to go with one of the more traditional chatbots. And if you've been following this series of reviews on different chatbots, you'll know the one that I've been recommending the most is Perplexity. And Perplexity is just, I think it has the best balance of really awesome features with that simplicity that I'm after. And it does have an app. It's a very good app. It does have an advanced voice mode. So it has all the things that I need. So that's why it's the one that I recommend. If you'd like to know more about how to write with AI, I'm currently totally doing a rehaul of all of my courses that you can find. And those will be in the Story Hacker Gold membership. Enrollment for Story Hacker Gold has been closed, but if you get on the wait list, we can probably get you in a little bit earlier than the public outing, which probably won't be until November at the latest, if not maybe next year, that I open it up again. And if you just want to dip your toes in and see if, my coursework and stuff is right for you, I would check out the Story Hacker Silver group, also linked down below, which gives you some of the basic courses and things like that. So, and a lot of my frameworks, the plot module framework, and a whole bunch of other stuff, a lot of my prompts. You can get all that in the Silver group. It's a one-time fee of $7. It's not recurring, so there's not much risk to it. And then if you like that, you can upgrade to the Gold group later on. So if that interests you, those links will be down below, and I will see you in the next video.